My sister got the 5-star villa while I got nothing, and I vanished, exposed the betrayal, and crushed our perfect family illusion. You'll understand when you're older, my mom said, after choosing a 5-star resort trip for my sister. I didn't argue. I just left the key on the table and vanished before they got back. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, thick cream paper with embossed lettering that screamed expensive. My mother held it like she was cradling something precious, her fingers trembling slightly as she slid out the invitation. It was Belle's wedding, 7 months away, a destination ceremony on the Amalfi Coast, because of course it was. Harper, sweetie, come look at this, Mom called from the kitchen, her voice climbing an octave higher than normal. The thing it only did when she was about to ask for something or deliver news she knew I wouldn't like. I was 28 years old, living in the guest house behind my parents' property because Los Angeles rent was astronomical, and my graphic design freelancing career was still building momentum. Belle was 31, a trauma surgeon married to Preston, a cardiothoracic surgeon, living in a 4-bedroom house in Pacific Palisades with a view of the ocean. The golden child, the one who'd done everything right. I walked into the main house through the back door, still wearing my paint-stained sweatpants and an oversized college hoodie. Mom was already dressed for her tennis lesson at the country club, her white skirt crisp and pleated, her highlighted hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Look how beautiful this is, she breathed, showing me the invitation. Italian script, gold foil, a watercolor rendering of the venue. Preston's parents are covering most of it, but we'll need to help with some costs. Your father and I have been talking. The way she said it made my stomach drop. We want to do something special for Belle before the wedding. A sister trip, just the 3 of us. A week at a resort, maybe somewhere tropical. Quality time before everything gets crazy with wedding planning. That sounds nice, I said carefully. Iberca. I was thinking we could go to this new place in Turks and Caicos. 5-star, all-inclusive. Belle's been so stressed with her trauma cases and planning, she deserves something amazing. There it was, the pivot. Not a sister trip, but a Belle trip that I would be attending. Aber, when were you thinking? I asked. Next month. I already looked at dates that work with Belle's surgery schedule. Mom poured herself more coffee, not meeting my eyes. The thing is, Harper, the rooms are quite expensive. We found this gorgeous 2-bedroom villa, and your father and I would take one room, and you girls would share the other. It's got this incredible view, private pool, the works. Aber, I waited. There was more coming. But there's also a smaller room, more of a standard hotel room at a different property on the island. Still nice, just not on the same level. And we were thinking maybe you could stay there instead. Belle could have the villa with us. She's been working such long hours at the hospital, and Preston's been traveling for that consulting project. She really needs this trip to be relaxing. Aber. The coffee maker gurgled behind her. Outside, Gardner was trimming the hedges, the sound of the shears cutting through the morning air with mechanical precision. So, let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want to take a sister trip where Belle stays in a 5-star villa with you and Dad, and I stay alone in a hotel room at a completely different property? It's still a very nice hotel, honey, 4 stars, and we'd all spend the days together, of course. It's just about the sleeping arrangements. Why can't Belle and I share the 2nd bedroom like you originally suggested? Hebra from Mom's face did something complicated. Well, Belle mentioned she really needs her own space to decompress. You know how she is. She needs quiet time in the mornings, and she likes to have her own bathroom routine, and Iberfi and I'm less important. That's not what I'm saying. Mom set down her coffee cup with a sharp click. Harper, you're being difficult. This isn't about importance. It's about the fact that Belle has a very demanding career, saving lives in an ER. She's planning a wedding. She's dealing with a lot of pressure. You're still figuring things out. You have more flexibility. You're younger. I'm 3 years younger. I'm not a child. You'll understand when you're older, Mom said, and something in my chest went cold and hard. When you have more responsibilities, when you've built the kind of life Belle has, you'll understand why sometimes she needs things to be a certain way. Hey bro, I looked at my mother, really looked at her. At 56 she was beautiful in that carefully maintained way that required dermatologist appointments, personal trainers, and standing hair appointments every 6 weeks. She'd never worked outside the home, had married my father right out of college, and had devoted herself to being the perfect corporate wife and mother. She poured everything into us, into Belle especially, living vicariously through her achievements. I need to get back to work, I said. Berkey, so, you'll come on the trip? I'll book a hotel room for you today. The resort is supposed to be lovely, even if it's not the same property. They have a great pool bar. Aber, sure, Mom, book whatever you want. Her face brightened immediately. Berkey. Oh, wonderful, this is going to be so special, just us girls, we can get massages, do some shopping in the town. I walked out before she could finish. Back across the perfectly manicured lawn, past the pool where I'd spent countless childhood summers watching Belle do perfect dives, while I splashed in the shallow end. Past the tennis courts, where Belle had won junior championships, while I sat in the bleachers pretending to read. It wasn't until I was halfway across the yard that the memories started flooding back, uninvited but relentless. I was 7 years old again, standing in our living room on Christmas morning. Belle had just unwrapped a professional-grade camera setup because she'd mentioned wanting to try photography once at dinner. I'd been taking pictures with a disposable camera for months, filling albums with photos of our neighborhood, of sunsets, of ordinary moments I thought were beautiful. My gift that year was a sweater and a gift card to Target. Harper takes nice pictures too, Dad had said, almost as an afterthought. Mom had smiled absently. She does. Maybe we'll get you a real camera next year, sweetie. Next year never came. Belle's photography phase lasted 3 weeks before she moved on to something else. The equipment sat in her closet, gathering dust, while I kept buying disposable cameras with my allowance money. I was 12, trying out for the school musical. I'd practiced my audition song for weeks and had actually gotten pretty good at it. Mom and Dad couldn't make it because they were at Belle's volleyball tournament 3 hours away. She didn't even play volleyball regularly. It was just a summer league. But they blocked off the whole weekend for it. I got a call back for the musical. When I told them, Mom said, "That's wonderful, honey," and then spent 20 minutes showing me videos of Belle's serves. I was 16, getting my driver's license. Belle had gotten a used BMW for her 16th birthday, silver with leather seats. I got to share the family Honda Civic with Mom, and only when she didn't need it. Belle's driving to UCLA every day, Dad explained. She needs reliable transportation. You're just going to high school down the street. I was 19, coming home for Thanksgiving my sophomore year of college. I'd just landed my first real design client, a local business that wanted a logo redesign. I was so proud, couldn't wait to tell everyone. I walked in the door to find the house decorated with a banner reading, "Congratulations, Dr. Belle." She'd gotten into medical school. The client I'd been excited about was never mentioned. When I tried to bring it up at dinner, Mom said, "That's nice, dear," and immediately pivoted back to discussing Belle's acceptance letters. At 23, graduating college, Belle was finishing her residency. My graduation was on a Saturday afternoon. Belle had a thing at the hospital, not even her shift, just some optional networking event. Mom and Dad debated for days whether they could skip it to come to my ceremony. In the end, Dad came alone. Mom stayed to support Belle at her networking thing. "She's making important connections for her career," Mom had said. "You understand, right, Harper? Always understanding, always flexible, always the one who could handle disappointment because I was used to it." The guest house was small, but it was mine. I'd painted the walls myself, a soft sage green that caught the morning light. My design work was spread across 2 monitors on a desk I'd refinished from a yard sale. I sat down and stared at the screen, but I wasn't seeing the logo I was supposed to be revising for a startup client. I was seeing every birthday where Belle got the bigger present, every Christmas where my gifts were thoughtful but hers were extravagant, every school play where they made it to all of her performances but missed mine because Belle had a conflict, every college graduation where they threw Belle a party at the country club and took me to dinner at Olive Garden. You'll understand when you're older. I understood perfectly well right now. That night, I started making plans. My laptop screen glowed in the darkness of the guest house. I'd been sitting there for an hour, staring at a blank document, trying to figure out what came next. The cursor blinked at me, patient and insistent. What did I actually want? The question felt bigger than it should have. I was 28 years old. I should have known the answer by now. But I'd spent so long being whoever my family needed me to be. The understanding one, the flexible one, the one who didn't make waves, that I'd never stopped to ask what I needed for myself. I opened a new browser tab and typed best cities for graphic designers. Seattle came up immediately. Portland, Austin, Denver, places I'd never seriously considered because leaving LA meant leaving my family, and despite everything, the thought of that had always felt impossible. Like cutting off a limb, painful and permanent, something you couldn't take back. But sitting there in that guest house, looking at the walls I'd painted, and the furniture I'd chosen, and the life I'd built in the shadow of my parents' property, I realized something. I'd already been cut off. I just hadn't been the one holding the knife. I clicked on Seattle. The design scene was thriving there. Tech companies were everywhere. which meant money for creative services. The city was beautiful in a completely different way than Los Angeles. Green and gray and moody instead of sunny and bright and relentlessly optimistic. It rained a lot. I liked rain. I'd never gotten to like rain in LA because there wasn't enough of it. And on the rare days it did rain, Belle would complain about her hair frizzing, Mom would cancel plans, and everyone would act like the world was ending. An article about Seattle's best design firms caught my eye. I clicked through, reading about agencies I'd only heard of in passing: Zenith Creative, Cascade Studios, Elevation Design House. They all sounded professional and established and completely out of my league, except I wasn't out of their league, was I? I'd been freelancing successfully for 3 years. I had a solid portfolio. I'd worked with startups and established businesses, had created brand identities and marketing materials and website designs that my clients actually used and loved. I was good at what I did. I just never had anyone in my family acknowledge it. Hey bro. My phone buzzed. A text from Belle. Mom showed me the resort pics. It looks amazing. Can't wait for our trip. Maybe we can get matching swimsuits or something cute like that. I stared at the message. Matching swimsuits? Like we were close enough for that kind of sister thing. Like she hadn't just agreed to a vacation arrangement where I'd be staying alone at a different property while she lived it up in luxury with our parents. Did she even realize how messed up that was? Or had she been the golden child for so long that she genuinely couldn't see it anymore? I set down my phone without responding and went back to my laptop. I found Nadia's number in my contacts. We'd met at a design conference in San Diego 2 years ago, both of us attending alone, both of us ending up at the hotel bar after a particularly boring panel on brand synergy or some other corporate nonsense. She'd been funny and sharp and refreshingly honest about the challenges of working in creative fields. We'd kept in touch sporadically since then. Mostly Instagram comments and the occasional text. She'd mentioned several times that I should consider moving to Seattle. The scene here is incredible, she'd said during our last phone call, maybe 6 months ago. And honestly, you're too talented to be scrambling for freelance clients in an oversaturated market. The agencies up here would hire you in a heartbeat. I'd brushed it off then, made excuses about family obligations and established client relationships, and not wanting to start over somewhere new. What a coward I'd been. I called Nadia, who ran a boutique real estate agency in Seattle. Harper, please tell me you're finally ready to get out of Los Angeles. What would it take for me to move there in the next month? Hebrew. There was a pause. Are you serious? Abra completely. Tibrika. Okay, let me think. I have a friend, or a roommate. Great apartment in Capitol Hill. As for work, I can make introductions tomorrow if you send me your updated portfolio. Are you really doing this? Hebruka, I am. What happened? I told her about the trip, about the separate hotel, about my mother's words. Nadia was quiet for a long moment. You know what? Good. You've been making excuses for them for too long. Come up here. Build something that's actually yours. Stop living in their shadow. Brurhi. I'll send you my portfolio tonight. Brurhi. Send it now. I'm texting Marcus at Zenith Creative. They're desperate for someone with your illustration skills. Brr. We talked for another hour, mapping out logistics. Nadia was the kind of person who made impossible things feel achievable, who turned anxiety into action items. By the time we hung up, I had a phone interview scheduled for Friday and a video tour of the apartment lined up for Saturday. I didn't tell my parents. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. My phone showed 3 missed texts from Mom, all about the trip, about restaurant reservations she was making, about whether I wanted to do a snorkeling excursion with them, or if I preferred to do my own thing. The subtext was clear. They'd be doing the fun activities as a family unit, and I could tag along if I wanted, or entertain myself if I didn't. I deleted the messages without responding. My first interview with Zenith Creative was scheduled for 10 in the morning. I spent an hour preparing, reviewing my portfolio, researching the company's recent projects, rehearsing answers to common interview questions. By the time the video call connected, I felt confident in a way I rarely did around my family. The interview went well, better than well. The creative director, a woman named Michelle with purple-framed glasses and an infectious energy, actually seemed excited about my work. She asked thoughtful questions about my process, my influences, my goals. She didn't once make me feel like I had to justify my career choice or explain why I wasn't doing something more prestigious. We've been looking for someone with your specific skill set for months, Michelle said, leaning forward in her chair. Your illustration work is exceptional. and the way you integrate it with brand identity is exactly what we need for our boutique clients. When could you start? I blinked. You're offering me the position? Pending a second interview with the team and reference checks, yes. But between you and me, I've already decided. You're exactly what we're looking for. So timeline? My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd need to relocate from Los Angeles, give notice on my current living situation, transition my freelance clients. Maybe 6 weeks. 6 weeks works. Can you come up for an in-person interview next week? We'll cover your flight and hotel. Absolutely. After the call ended, I sat there, staring at my blank computer screen, barely breathing. It had been that easy. One phone call, one conversation with someone who actually valued what I brought to the table. And suddenly I had a path forward. Why had I waited so long? 3. The trip was 6 weeks away. I went through the motions. I helped Belle when she called, asking me to design custom welcome bags for her wedding guests. I showed up to family dinners. I smiled when Mom talked endlessly about the resort, about the spa treatments she'd booked, about the restaurants they'd be trying. Did you book any spa treatments, Harper? Belle asked over Sunday dinner, cutting her grilled salmon into precise bites. I'm not sure they have a spa at my hotel. Oh. She looked uncomfortable for approximately 3 seconds before Mom jumped in. I'm sure they have something, honey. Maybe a massage on the beach or something casual like that. Preston, Belle's husband, cleared his throat. He was handsome in that bland Ken doll way. All strong jaw and perfect teeth and absolutely no personality that I could ever detect. Actually, I think Harper's Hotel does have a small spa. I looked it up when Sarah mentioned the arrangements. Seems like a nice place. He was trying. I appreciated it, even though it didn't change anything. That's great, I said. I'm sure it'll be fine. My phone interview became a second interview. The second interview became an offer. The offer was better than I'd expected, more money than I was making as a freelancer, with benefits and a design team I'd actually be excited to work with. The apartment was perfect, a converted loft with exposed brick and enough space for a proper studio setup. I accepted everything. 4 weeks before the trip, I started quietly moving my things out of the guest house. Not everything at once, that would be too obvious. Just a box or two every few days, loading them into my car before dawn and driving them to a storage unit I'd rented across town. Clothes, books, art supplies, my favorite mug, the quilt my grandmother had made me before she died, the one person in the family who'd never compared me to Belle. Grandma Jun had been different. She'd been Mom's mother, but somehow she'd escaped the need to live vicariously through her children and grandchildren. When I was little, she used to take me to art museums while Belle was at soccer practice or debate club or whatever activity she was excelling at that season. We'd stand in front of paintings for hours, and she'd ask me what I saw, what I felt, what stories I imagined behind the brushstrokes. You have an artist's soul, she told me once when I was maybe 13. We were looking at a Monet, the water lilies blurring into impressionist dreams. That's a gift, Harper. Don't let anyone convince you it's worth less than a medical degree or a law degree or whatever practical thing they think you should pursue. Mom thinks art is a hobby, I'd said. Grandma June had squeezed my hand. Your mother thinks a lot of things, doesn't make them true. You know what makes you happy, sweetheart. Don't forget that. She died when I was 17, a sudden heart attack on a Tuesday morning. I'd been at school when it happened. By the time I got to the hospital, she was gone. Belle had been studying for the MCATs. Mom had called her first, even though I'd been closer to Grandma June. Even in death, the hierarchy held. The quilt had been left to me in her will. Mom had seemed surprised. I thought she'd give it to Belle, she'd said, actually said out loud. Belle's the one getting married someday, starting a family. But Grandma June had known. She'd always known which one of us needed that tangible reminder that someone had seen us, had valued us for exactly who we were. I packed that quilt first, wrapped it carefully in tissue paper, and placed it in a box labeled Essentials. Whatever happened next, wherever I ended up, that quilt was coming with me. The in-person interview in Seattle went even better than the video call. The team at Zenith Creative was collaborative and talented, the kind of people who challenged each other without tearing each other down. Michelle introduced me to everyone, and I felt immediately comfortable in a way I never had at family gatherings. These people spoke my language. They understood what it meant to obsess over color palettes and typography and the tiny details that made a design sing. The office was in a converted warehouse in Capitol Hill, all exposed brick and industrial lighting and plants everywhere. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. There was a coffee bar in the break room with an actual espresso machine and a design library filled with books I'd been wanting to read for years. Brr. So, what do you think? Michelle asked as we wrapped up the tour. Bro, I think I'd be an idiot to say no. Brr, she laughed. Good answer, we'll send over the formal offer by the end of the week. Welcome to the team, Harper. I walked out of that building, feeling 10 feet tall. I grabbed coffee at a shop nearby where the barista had tattoos down both arms and recommended a lavender oat milk latte that was absurdly good. I wandered through Pike Place Market, watching tourists take pictures of flying fish and street musicians playing for tips. I found a bookstore that smelled like old paper and possibility. Seattle felt like a place where I could breathe. 3 weeks before the trip, I told my clients I was relocating and would be transitioning my work. Most were supportive. One offered to keep me on retainer for remote work. I organized my files, backed everything up, and created handoff documents for the few projects I couldn't take with me 2 weeks before the trip. Mom asked me to go wedding dress shopping with her and Belle, and I went. I watched my sister try on gowns that cost more than my car. I smiled and nodded. When Mom cried, I agreed that yes, the Vera Wang was stunning, yes, she looked like a princess, yes, Preston was a lucky man. The bridal salon was in Beverly Hills, the kind of place where they served champagne and had private fitting rooms the size of my entire guest house. Mom had made appointments at 3 different salons because apparently one wasn't enough when you were marrying a surgeon. I sat on a white velvet couch, sipping overpriced champagne I didn't want, watching Belle model dress after dress. She did look beautiful. She'd always been beautiful, tall and slim with a kind of effortless elegance that made everything look expensive. Mom kept dabbing at her eyes with tissues the salon attendant provided, probably for exactly this purpose. Harper, what do you think of this one? Belle asked, spinning in a ball gown with enough tulle to upholster a small apartment. It's gorgeous, I said. Because it was. Brr, but do you love it? Like, is it the one? Brr. I studied her carefully. The dress was objectively stunning, but Belle's face looked uncertain. I think you should wear what makes you feel like yourself, I said. Not what looks good in pictures or what Mom wants. Something flickered across her face. Understanding, maybe, or recognition that I'd just called out the pattern we'd been following our entire lives. The problem is, I don't know what I want, she admitted quietly. I just know what I'm supposed to want. Mom was busy talking to the attendant about alteration timelines and didn't hear, but I heard. For just a second, I saw past the golden child facade to the person underneath, and she looked exhausted. Then maybe take some time to figure it out, I said. The wedding is in 6 months. People postpone weddings, people elope, people do all kinds of things that aren't the big production everyone expects. Preston's parents already put down deposits, Belle said. Brr, I set down my champagne glass. Do you want to marry him? Of course I do. Do you want this wedding? She opened her mouth, closed it, and looked at herself in the mirror, wrapped in thousands of dollars of silk and tulle and expectations. I don't know, she whispered. Before I could respond, Mom swept over with another dress. Try this one, it's even more dramatic than the last. Oh, you're going to look like royalty. Belle took the dress and disappeared into the fitting room. The moment was gone, but I kept thinking about the look on her face. That flash of uncertainty. My sister, who'd always known exactly what she wanted, or at least what she was supposed to want. Maybe she was as trapped as I was, just in a prettier cage. Belle caught my arm as we were leaving. Hey, are you okay? You seem distant lately. Just busy with work. The wedding stuff isn't too much, is it? I know Mom can be intense. It's fine, Belle, I promise. Bro. She studied me for a moment, and I saw something flicker across her face. Concern, maybe, or guilt. But then Mom called her over to discuss veils, and the moment passed. 1 week before the trip, I gave notice to my landlords, technically my parents. I emailed my father's assistant with a formal letter, 30 days notice that I'd be vacating the guest house. She responded with a confused email asking if I wanted her to forward it to my father. I said yes. Dad called that evening. Harper, honey, what's this about moving out? I got a job in Seattle. I'm relocating. Seattle? When did this happen? I've been working on it for a while. Does your mother know? Not yet. Sighed heavily. You should tell her yourself. Don't do this through my assistant, okay, Harper? His voice softened. Is this about the trip? It's about a lot of things, Dad. Your mother loves you. You know that, right? She worries about you. She wants you to have what Belle has. Maybe I want something different than what Belle has. That's fair, he said quietly. When are you leaving? 5 days. Hebriki Jesus that soon? Hebriki, I start work in 2 weeks. I wanted time to settle in. You're not coming on the trip, a question. Faber, no dad, I'm not. Hebrew, another long silence. I think part of me knew. Okay, I understand, but you need to tell your mother and sister yourself. They deserve that much. Burhi, I will. Burhi, but I didn't. 3 days before the trip, I finished packing. My car was loaded with the essentials. Everything else was either in storage or had been donated. The guest house looked almost exactly as it had when I'd moved in. Generic and impersonal, like I'd never really lived there at all. 2 days before the trip, I had one last dinner at the main house. Mom made her famous lasagna. Belle came with Preston. We sat around the table like we'd done 1,000 times before, talking about the resort, about the wedding, about Preston's new surgical technique that was getting written up in some medical journal. Nobody asked me about my work. Nobody asked me about my life. Nobody noticed the way I was memorizing everything. The chandelier Dad had brought back from a business trip to Prague. The wine glasses Mom collected from every vacation, the sound of Belle's laugh when Preston told a story about a colleague. I can't wait for this trip, Belle said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Sister time, no boys allowed. Sorry, Preston. I think I'll survive a week without you, he said dryly. Brr. We should make it a tradition, Mom added. An annual girls' trip. Wouldn't that be wonderful? He sounds perfect, I said. Brr. The day before the trip, I cleaned the guest house thoroughly. I fixed the loose handle on one of the cabinets. I replaced the air filter. I left it better than I'd found it. On the kitchen counter, I placed a single key on top of an envelope. Inside the envelope was a letter. I'd rewritten it 7 times, trying to find the right words. In the end, I kept it simple. Brr, Mom and Dad. Brr. By the time you read this, I'll be in Seattle. I accepted a job there, and I've already moved most of my things. I'm not coming on the trip. I'm not coming to the wedding. I love you both. I love Belle. But I can't keep being the consolation prize in my own family. I can't keep being the one who's supposed to understand, who's supposed to be flexible, who's supposed to accept less and be grateful for it. You taught me to know my worth, so I'm choosing to go somewhere that recognizes it. I'll send you my new address once I'm settled. I hope someday we can build a relationship where I'm seen as more than just Belle's little sister. Love, Harper, Brooke. I read it one more time, sealed the envelope, and left it there. The key would let them into the guest house when they got back from the trip and realized I wasn't answering my phone. The letter would explain the rest. Burke. I loaded the last box into my car. I took one final look at the property I'd grown up on. The sprawling house, the perfect landscaping, the pool house, the guest cottage that had been my cage. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and pink that were almost too beautiful. My phone buzzed. Mom, can't wait for tomorrow. Flight's at 10 in the morning, don't forget. I typed back, have an amazing trip, love you. Then I turned off my phone, got in my car, and drove away. The drive to Seattle took 17 hours with stops. I made a playlist of songs I'd loved as a teenager, the kind of music Belle had always said was too weird, too indie, too me. I stopped at roadside diners and weird tourist traps. I took pictures of mountains I'd never seen before. I cried somewhere around the Oregon border, big ugly sobs that made my chest ache, mourning something I'd never really had, but I also laughed. I called Nadia and told her I was really doing it. I sang along to music at the top of my lungs. I felt lighter than I had in years. Seattle was gray and drizzly when I arrived, exactly like everyone said it would be. I loved it immediately. The apartment was perfect. Nadia had left a bottle of wine in a welcome basket on the counter. I unpacked my grandmother's quilt first, spread it across the bed, and lay down on top of it. My phone was still off. I knew what would be waiting when I turned it on. The panic, the anger, the guilt trips. But they wouldn't find the letter yet. They were still on their luxury vacation, probably assuming I'd had some kind of emergency or breakdown. Let them wonder. Let them enjoy their trip to Turks and Caicos without me. Let them have exactly what they'd planned. A family vacation where I wasn't really part of the family. A week and a half later, I finally powered on my phone. 62 missed calls, 38 text messages, 17 voicemails. I skipped the voicemails and went straight to the texts. Brooke, Mom, Harper, where are you? We're at the airport. Mom, Harper, this isn't funny, call me immediately. Brookie, Mom, we're boarding without you. You better have a good explanation. There was a gap then, while they were on the plane. Brookie, Belle, Harper, what the hell? Mom is freaking out. Belle, if you're mad about the room situation, you could have just talked to us like an adult. Belle, seriously, where are you? This is scary. At least let us know you're alive. Mom, Harper, please just send one text so we know you're safe. We can talk about everything else later. Dad. Abri. Dad. I called the police to do a welfare check. They said the guest house is empty and locked up. Harper, whatever's going on, please contact us. Then, from 2 days ago, after they'd returned home. Dad, we found your letter. I'm disappointed you couldn't face us directly, but I understand why you left. Call your mother when you're ready. She's devastated. Betrayal. I can't believe you're doing this before my wedding. This is the most selfish thing you've ever done. Mom, how could you? How could you do this to our family, to your sister? Do you have any idea what you've put us through? The messages continued in that vein. Anger, guilt-tripping, accusations. But buried in there were a few that made me pause. Dad, I'm sorry we made you feel like you had to disappear. You deserved better from us. And surprisingly, from yesterday, Belle, Preston, and I talked. He said some things that made me think. I'm sorry, Harper. I'm sorry I let Mom put you in a separate hotel. I'm sorry I didn't notice how much we take you for granted. I want to fix this. Please call me. Ibri. I didn't call, not yet. Instead, I sent a group text to all three of them. I'm safe. I'm in Seattle. I started my new job, and I love it. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I will be eventually. I need time to figure out who I am outside of being the daughter who understands, the sister who's flexible. I hope you can respect that. I love you all. I turned off my phone again. The first week at my new job was intense in the best way. The team was talented and collaborative. My boss actually listened to my ideas. The project I was assigned to, rebranding for a sustainable fashion startup, was exactly the kind of work I dreamed of doing. I found a coffee shop near my apartment that made perfect oat milk lattes. I explored the city, got lost in Pike Place Market, took a ferry to Bainbridge Island just because I could. Nadia introduced me to her friend group, and suddenly I had people to get drinks with on Friday nights who didn't know anything about my family, who just knew me as Harper, the designer from California with a weird sense of humor and a tendency to sketch on napkins. 2 weeks in, I turned on my phone to find a voice message from my father. Harper, honey, I just want you to know that I get it. I really do. Your mother and I have been talking a lot this week. She's still hurt, but she's starting to understand. Belle's been thoughtful too. Surprisingly, I think this shook all of us up in a way we needed. I'm proud of you for choosing yourself. I should have told you that more often. I love you. Call when you're ready. His voice cracked on that last part. I cried in my new apartment, but they were different tears. Relief maybe, or grief for what we'd never been, mixed with hope for what we might become. 3 weeks in, Belle sent me a long email instead of a text. She apologized for real this time, without excuses or justifications. She admitted she'd always known she was the favorite, had felt guilty about it, but also enjoyed the privileges too much to push back. She said Preston had pointed out that she was becoming like Mom, organizing her own life around being the center of attention. She said she was working on it. She said she missed me and hoped I'd still come to the wedding, but she understood if I couldn't. P.S., she wrote at the end. I uninvited Mom from my final dress fitting and asked the coordinator to save you a spot instead if you want it. No pressure, but I'd really like you there as my sister, not as my assistant or my cheerleader, just you. I read that email 5 times. 4 weeks in, I finally called my mother. She cried. I cried. We both said things that needed to be said. She apologized, really apologized, and admitted she'd been projecting her own unmet ambitions onto Belle, had measured both of us against some impossible standard she'd never achieved herself. She said she was starting therapy. She said she was trying to understand why she'd always needed one of us to be exceptional and had cast the other as supporting cast. I kept telling you that you'd understand when you were older, she said, but you understood all along. You were just waiting for me to catch up. Brr. Yeah, I said, I was. Bray, are you happy there? I looked around my apartment, at my art supplies spread across the dining table, at the view of the city through my windows, at the life I was building brick by brick. I really am, Mom. Abricood, guts good. Her voice was small. Will you come to the wedding? Shiberki, I'm thinking about it. Aberly, that's all I can ask. 5 weeks in, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because Belle was my sister, flawed and complicated, but trying. Because my parents were also flawed and complicated, but trying. Because family was messy and painful, and sometimes you had to leave to figure out how to come back on your own terms. The wedding was beautiful. I stood beside Belle as she married Preston on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean. Mom cried. Dad cried. I might have cried a little too. At the reception, Belle pulled me aside. Thank you for coming. Thanks for actually wanting me here. Berkey. I always wanted you here, Harper. I just didn't know how to want you here without making it about me. She squeezed my hand. How's Seattle? He amazing. You should visit. Brooker, I'd like that. She paused. Preston and I are thinking about having kids soon. I want them to know their aunt, the real you, not the version you had to perform for us. Heartbreak, I'd like that too. We stood there for a moment, sisters for real, maybe for the first time, watching the sunset over the Italian coast. For what it's worth, Belle said quietly, you were right to leave. I would have suffocated if I were you. You still might suffocate, if you're not careful. Don't let mom plan your whole life. Brooke, working on it. She smiled. Learning from the best. Brew. 6 months later, I'm still in Seattle. My apartment is fully decorated now, filled with art I've created and furniture I've chosen. I got promoted at work. I'm seeing someone casually, a marine biologist who makes me laugh and doesn't give a damn about status or success metrics. I have friends who know me as Harper First, not as anyone's little sister. My family visits sometimes. We're building something new, something more honest. It's awkward and uncomfortable and infinitely better than what we had before. Mom still occasionally slips into old patterns comparing us without meaning to, but now Belle calls her on it. Dad too, and I've learned to set boundaries without guilt, to say no without explaining myself to death. Last week, Belle called to tell me she's pregnant. I'm going to be an aunt. She asked if I'd designed something for the nursery, and I could hear in her voice that she was asking, not expecting, that she valued my work, my talent, me. Brooker, I'd love to, I said. Really? Free, real Lily. Oh, brr. After we hung up, I walked to my favorite coffee shop and ordered my usual. The barista knew my name now, asked about my weekend. I sat by the window and sketched ideas for my niece or nephew's nursery, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard my mother's voice from that morning in the kitchen. You'll understand when you're older. I smiled to myself. Turns out I understood perfectly well all along. I just had to leave to prove it, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.